A man confesses to stabbing his girlfriend to death, then dumping her body under a bridge. The evidence that led to his arrest. A 15-year-old is one of the victims of a triple shooting in northeast Baltimore. Fox 45 News explores how young people in the city aren't immune to the violence. Billions of your tax dollars funding a new education plan, but is it already outdated? Fox 45 News Project Baltimore questions how the Kerwin plan addresses distance learning and teacher shortages.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Mary Bubala.
And I'm Kai Jackson. Violent crime across Baltimore City is up 5% compared to this time last year, and that includes murders and non-fatal shootings. Tonight, crime is even claiming young lives in Baltimore.
Also, we are learning about the gruesome details from a recent murder case. Charging documents say a man killed his girlfriend and then dumped her body using a shopping cart.
Fox 45's Keith Daniels has been examining details of that case. He'll join us live with some shocking details coming up in a few minutes.
Our live team coverage begins, though, with Jeff Abel and what we're learning about a triple shooting today that left a 15-year-old hurt. Jeff?
Well, the search is still on tonight for the gunman who opened fire near Clifton Park this afternoon. Neighbors are reporting rapid gunfire there. And tonight, a 15-year-old is among the wounded. On this troubled block of East 29th Street, anger was in the air and violence was in the streets.
Like I said, it just sounded like loud boom.
It had been 30 to 60 rounds, within about less than 10 seconds.
Jeff Lindner was installing a security system at a home on this street when the bullets started flying.
My partner was outside and saw people fleeing the area. One
of the three people hit by the gunfire was a 15-year-old male. Two other male victims, a 23 and 25-year-old, were also injured.
There were children, elementary school-age children on the street when it happened.
Officers spent most of the afternoon questioning residents on this block and searching for clues. At one home, officers raced inside, but it's unclear what, if anything, was recovered. In this case, the three victims are all expected to survive their injuries, but a report released earlier this year showed the number of young homicide victims in this city is growing. In fact, homicide is now the leading cause of death among children in Baltimore.
These kids are going to kindergarten, and when they go into kindergarten, they're drawing pictures of guns and dead bodies because that's their experience. We've got to change the narrative.
Today's shooting happened a couple of blocks from Clifton Park, but tonight, officers are still trying to understand who opened fire here and why.
I grew up hearing helicopters when I'm going to bed at night, so what are you going to do?
Well, that 15-year-old is believed to be hit by a bullet in the leg, but all three, police tell us tonight, received non-life-threatening injuries. We're live. Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
Jeff, thank you. That triple shooting is just one of violent incidents today. It happened just after 7 at the intersection of 4th Street and Patapsco Avenue in South Baltimore. That scene is on the right side of your screen. A man was shot in the neck. He is expected to be okay. Then just 4 minutes later, police in Southwest Baltimore say they found a body in a car along Griffith Avenue. It's not clear how that person died, but police are calling it a homicide. And we're learning some details tonight about a body found in South Baltimore last week. Keith Daniels continues our team coverage. He joins us live now with charging documents and what they reveal. Keith?
Well, Mary, police arrested a 63-year-old man, charged him with murder in connection to this case. The victim killed during a domestic dispute, they say. Now, they arrested that man Thursday. Tonight, news of the arrest and the unsettling details in these charging documents tonight of what happened. It's a crime that some in the neighborhood say they had not heard about. News of the murder stopped Angela Norman in her tracks during her evening walk.
For other people to help that individual, that's even scarier.
Baltimore police have arrested Bruce Poole in connection with the murder of Kelly Logan. Police say the 63-year-old man killed the 53-year-old woman inside his bedroom at the Hampshire House Apartments on Park Heights Avenue near Menlo Drive, Saturday, September 17th. 4 days later, September 21st, the woman's body discovered in thick brush under a light rail bridge along Cloman Street in South Baltimore. Investigators say she had been stabbed several times in her head and neck. According to charging documents, After she was killed, the suspect used a shopping cart similar to this one to remove a large plastic trash bag believed to be filled with Logan's remains from his apartment, then dumped the woman's body, police say, with the help of 2 other individuals.
Because nobody thought that that was wrong. The other people who were helping him didn't see anything wrong with that. The individual might have said it's garbage or whatever, but still, like, I don't know. It's just a really sad situation.
Investigators learned Logan lived with Poole, her boyfriend. While at the apartment on the same day the body was found, police say Poole showed up at the apartment. Investigators say he was questioned. A short time later, police say he confessed to the murder.
I'm just glad that the police caught him because he might do it to somebody else. You know, I mean, it's just that simple.
Well, tonight, Poole is behind bars. He faces several charges, including first-degree murder. We're live tonight. Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
Keith, thank you. Fox 45 is demanding answers from Baltimore City Council members after a hearing on the Johns Hopkins Police Department, originally scheduled for Thursday, was canceled. Now, Councilwoman Odette Ramos proposed that meeting and canceled it. In a statement today, she said it's because of logistics. The statement goes on to say her office is working to plan a virtual town hall on the matter. There are questions tonight Fox 45 News has for City Council members. Today, we sent those questions to them, asking questions such as, do you support the implementation of JHU's police force? If not, what are your concerns? If you do not support the Hopkins police, should other universities have their police forces in that area disbanded? And given the understaffing of the Baltimore Police Department, do you believe BPD can provide the level of policing on the campuses of Hopkins without a private police force? Well, so far, we haven't heard back from any council members we emailed. Now, there are more opportunities for the community to come together and talk about this. In fact, Hopkins is having 2 more town halls this week, Thursday and also Friday.
Well, the evolution of another organization aimed at curbing crime continues as contracts between Safe Streets and 2 community nonprofits are now in the works. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost has a look at the growing concerns about oversight and transparency.
We've been investigating Safe Streets for almost a year now. We're back at the accountability desk because there are some major updates that we want to walk you through. First, about a week ago, Mayor Brandon Scott announced some shakeups to how the program is run. This is how the program was operating. Remember, there were multiple community-based organizations, or CBOs. They're the ones implementing the Safe Streets program in all 10 locations all across the city. But now, in the announcement, now Mayor Scott is bringing the oversight under just 2 community-based organizations, LifeBridge Health Center for Hope and Catholic Charities. Locations like Bel Air Edison, Franklin Square, and Woodbourne McCabe. These are the locations that will be managed by LifeBridge Health Center of Hope. You can see 2 of which they already manage. And Catholic Charities, they'll have a few too. Or Penn North and Cherry Hill. But beyond that, we still don't really know much else. Last week when I asked Mayor Brandon Scott about these new contracts that the city will have with LifeBridge and Catholic Charities, he was pretty short on details.
Contracts go through the Board of Estimates, and that's when it comes to the public. I don't know how many times we have to tell you that. We might have to give you guys another lesson on how city government works.
Monty is the one working with these agencies.
All right. We have a public process of showing contracts to the Board of Estimates in Baltimore.
We also learned that City Council President Nick Mosby tells me he was not informed the mayor was making these changes before the news was publicized.
My team nor myself was provided any prior briefing on the restructuring of Safe Streets.
A few hours after I talked to the council president, I took his concerns directly to Mayor Brandon Scott and asked him what happened.
We did. I know that I personally talked to council members about it, so that's what I have to say about that.
So is the council president lying?
I can't speak to the council president.
The mayor later admitted that there was a mistake made in terms of communicating these changes with the council president. But this program is still shrouded in questions, especially when it comes to transparency, accountability, and oversight. And given these new changes are coming, we continue to ask questions. But we still have so many questions about Safe Streets and how the program is implemented, especially when it comes to accountability, transparency, and oversight. And with these changes coming, we're sending even more questions to the mayor's office. So here are the questions we're still asking. Has Mayor Scott talked with Council President Nick Mosby since the Safe Streets changes were first announced? When will the public learn more about these community-based organizations and their roles with the city moving forward? And ultimately, is Mayor Scott hiding something? And ultimately, we asked that last question because we have been asking and sending so many questions to the mayor's office and the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. That's MONSE, the agency implementing Safe Streets. Our questions usually get met with either roadblocks or really non-answers. I did get a statement from the mayor's office saying that MONSE is working with Council President Nick Mosby's office to schedule a meeting so they can talk about what Safe Streets looks like moving forward. For the other questions, the mayor's office tells me that more information about what's next will become available as they hash out the details. They tell me that everyone has been transparent about this process moving forward, but throughout our investigations, we know that simply is not true. So we continue to ask for an interview. If the mayor or Shante Jackson, who oversees MONSE, wants to sit down and talk with me about Safe Streets and what this program looks like moving forward, we're more than happy to make that happen. But in the meantime, if you have a tip or any piece of information that you think I need to know about as we continue to dig into Safe Streets, let me know and send it to me directly. You can send it to safestreetstips@gmail.com. Remember that this program utilizes tax dollars, so we're going to continue to ask city leaders how they're spending your money, trying to get to the bottom of what's going on. At the Accountability Desk, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Well, we want to know what you think. Is Mayor Brandon Scott being forthcoming about the Safe Streets program? So far, 98% of you say no. Head to foxbaltimore.com/vote to weigh in.
Hurricane Ian is barreling toward the United States and is expected to make landfall somewhere in Florida later this week. Now, Governor Larry Hogan says he's monitoring the storm and is preparing to help with the response. Let's go right to Chief Meteorologist Jonathan Myers for a look at where that storm is now. Jonathan, how serious has this thing gotten?
Well, it's getting stronger and rapidly. Right now, a Category 2 storm as of the latest advisory, 8 p.m. out of the National Hurricane Center. But take a look at this. Overnight tonight into tomorrow morning could be a Category 3 storm as it crosses western Cuba and eventually could become a Category 4 as it makes a near and perhaps devastating pass, not only with rain and wind, but also storm surge right around Tampa, Florida. And then look, starts moving up the southeastern United States once it makes that perhaps very close to direct hit on Tampa or the Big Bend of Florida. And it could potentially provide rain and some wind around here. I'm going to be timing it out for you and telling you how much in my weather authority forecast.
Still ahead on Fox 45 News at 10 o'clock tonight. 2 years after rolling out the multi-billion-dollar Kerwin plan, Maryland is seeing some setbacks. Project Baltimore looks into whether it's already outdated. Good term limits be coming to Baltimore City Council members. Fox 45 looks at the history of the idea ahead of a big announcement tomorrow. And still ahead at 10:30 tonight, dissecting Baltimore's crime crisis, what the numbers show after a violent weekend. It is a multi-billion-dollar plan to improve public education in Maryland, but just 2 years after rolling out the Kerwin plan, Maryland is already seeing some setbacks.
As Project Baltimore's Chris Papps explains, the man behind this massive funding increase is asking for patience. Kerwin says Maryland is on track to have America's best schools in less than 10 years.
There being 95 votes in the affirmative.
February 2021.
The veto is overridden.
Maryland's legislature overrides Governor Larry Hogan's veto and passes the largest education spending increase in Maryland's history. $30 billion additional tax dollars over the first 10 years. $4 billion additional tax dollars every year after that. It was called the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, also known as the Kerwin plan.
First of all, the blueprint is very rigorously drawn from the elements of the highest performing school systems in the world.
Britt Kerwin spent 4 years leading the commission that drafted the plan.
We took those strategies, put them into the Maryland context, and that's how we built the blueprint.
All of a sudden, everybody knows a lot of people that are infected.
In early 2021, the world was suffering through the COVID pandemic. Many state politicians, including Comptroller Peter Franchot, called on the legislature to delay voting on the blueprint until we emerge from the pandemic. But the legislature passed it anyway.
Did COVID, in a way, sort of render the blueprint outdated?
No, absolutely not. COVID is short-term, had very significant impact, but COVID is short-term. The blueprint is forever.
But the effects of COVID are not short-term. So distance learning, for example, distance learning is never going to go away.
Right.
Many critics of the Kerwin plan point out it doesn't address distance learning. Maryland is also facing major bus driver and teacher shortages. Schools in the Baltimore region reported hundreds of openings leading up to the start of school. Many blame the Great Resignation due to COVID. But as the nation faces a teacher shortage, the blueprint added teachers, attracting them with higher pay. So far, it hasn't seemed to work. But Kerwin says in a few years, it will.
I think what we've done in Maryland is to create a model for teachers with this career ladder and substantial increases in pay, more autonomy in the classroom, is going to make teaching in Maryland not only an attractive career position for Marylanders, but for attracting people from across the country.
The blueprint also created incentives for teachers to achieve higher levels of professional certification. But that, too, hasn't gone as planned. Over the summer, facing pressure from school systems, the Maryland State Department of Education lowered the requirements of some teacher certifications to get more teachers in the classroom. But Kerwin says this, too, is only temporary.
It would be silly for me to predict exactly what date it would be totally back to normal, but I think over the next 2 or 3 years, things will seem very much a place where we'd like them to be.
The Kerwin plan was not the first time Maryland overhauled public education. 20 years ago, the legislature passed what was called the Bridge to Excellence Act, or the Thornton Plan, which at the time was the largest education spending increase in the state's history. But the results were questionable. In 2002, when Thornton passed, Maryland's high school graduation rate was 3 points above the national average. By 2019, Maryland's graduation rate had gone up, but the national average went up more. Maryland's graduation rate and the national average are now the same. Kerwin says Thornton succeeded by increasing funding, but failed in creating a structure for how the money was used. The blueprint, he says, is different. It lays out strict guidelines and expectations for how the additional funding can be spent. He also says there's accountability.
As the money is allocated, there's an accountability board that is going to measure progress towards meeting these expectations. And the AIB, the Accountability Board, has the authority to withhold funds when jurisdictions are not meeting the expectations.
What Thornton also didn't have was a definition for success. For Kerwin, it's clear. In 9 more years, after $30 billion additional education dollars are spent, despite the effects of COVID, Kerwin says success will be if 80% of Maryland students are considered career and college ready by the end of 10th grade. And that is a lofty goal. Right now, he says that percentage sits around 40%.
That would be success. That would be remarkable. It would put us way ahead of every state in the U.S., and it would put us on a par with the best performing school systems in the world.
I'm Chris Pabst, and this is Project Baltimore.
As Kerwin explained, the blueprint for Maryland's future is implemented over 10 years, costing billions of dollars. Project Baltimore will be watching to see how those tax dollars are spent and if they make a difference for students.
Happening tomorrow, the People for Elected Accountability and Civic Engagement will announce proposed term limits for elected leaders in Baltimore City. Now, the issue will be on the ballot for voters to decide on Election Day. Now, that measure limits any member of City Council, the mayor, and City Comptroller to 2 terms in office. You can watch tomorrow's announcement starting at 11 o'clock on Fox 45 News Midday and on our website, foxbaltimore.com.
Well, this is far from the first time term limits have been considered in Baltimore City. In 2018, Councilman Yitzi Schleifer introduced a bill to limit the number of consecutive terms politicians could serve. That bill did not pass, and a similar one failed in 2020. Comptroller Bill Henry also tried to approve term limits while he was on the city council. That bill also failed. And when you look around the country, Baltimore is a bit of an outlier. 9 of the 10 largest cities in the U.S. have term limits in place for their mayor, city council members, or both. In Washington, D.C., voters tried to put the question of term limits on the ballot in 2020, but that got overruled. In Baltimore, voters now do have that authority, and they'll have a chance to make a final decision this November.
Lamar Jackson dazzles again in a Ravens win over the Patriots. Morgan Atzel will join us in a few minutes with a look at how his MVP caliber play is factoring into contract negotiations.
And tracking potential rain and wind impacts for Maryland out of Ian, which could become a monster overnight into early tomorrow morning. Take a look. Computer models, and this will likely change as we head through the next couple of days, put out up to about an inch or 2 of rain in spots here in Baltimore later on in the weekend into early next week. And also some real strong winds around the Gulf Coast, but notice some of those blues and greens, maybe 20 or 40 mile an hour gusts coming our way by the end of the weekend. I'm going to time it all out hour by hour coming up, my full 7-day forecast and on the Future Scan. Stick around.
A convincing win for the Ravens this weekend at New England.
That's right. As the Ravens avenged their performance against the Dolphins just a week ago, Morgan Adson joins us now with a Week 3 recap. Morgan.
Hey, guys, as far as the Ravens see it, the only time and energy they were going to give their Week 2 loss to Miami was to learn from it and move on to New England. Yesterday's performance and 37-26 win against the Patriots is proof it's truly week by week in this league. The teams are never as good as they think they are or as bad. And the Ravens, though, they can chalk up Week 3 in the good column. Quarterback Lamar Jackson through 3 games, surpassing his MVP-style play from 2019. He's got 5 total touchdowns. He leads the league with 10 passing and is a top 4 runner. The defense, after blowing a 21-point fourth-quarter lead to the Dolphins, generated 4 turnovers, 3 of those takeaways during New England's final 3 possessions to put the game away.
Obviously, a very important win. Back and watch the tape. It's one of those games that looked very similar on tape to what it looked like when you watch it in real time. So confirmed a lot of things for us. I thought the guys played extremely hard and made plays when they needed to be made and critical points in time in the game. So in a hard-fought battle, and that's really at the end what wins games.
Mondays are usually for injury updates with that hardball availability. And while running back J.K. Dobbins checked out well after his 2022 debut and 26 snaps against the Pats, Harbaugh didn't provide anything groundbreaking on some key veterans that left injured, especially nose tackle Michael Pierce. His MRI results were not known yet on his arm. Mary?
Thank you, Morgan. Concerns about rising crime after a violent weekend in Baltimore. What some experts say is behind the crime spike right after the break.
Baltimore police are investigating after a triple shooting in northeast Baltimore leaves a 15-year-old boy hurt this afternoon.
Yeah, that is the second triple shooting that we've seen in the past few days. There was another late Saturday night. A total of 7 people were hurt in shootings over the weekend.
Fox 45's Alexa Ashwell is taking a closer look at the crime crisis in Baltimore.
Over the weekend, a triple shooting occurred in South Baltimore. A total of 7 people were shot over the weekend. One of those cases downgraded to an aggravated assault. This as homicides and non-fatal shootings remain up citywide.
In South Baltimore's Brooklyn community,
Police say 3 people were shot here on 5th Street around 10:45 Saturday night. The victims, a man, a 31-year-old woman, and a 19-year-old. Police not yet detailing what led up to the shooting, saying officers were called here after reports of gunshots, found the 2 adults and then the teen less than a mile away. Over the weekend, a total of 7 people shot. In addition, police reporting 21 robberies. The latest statistics showing homicides are up 3%, non-fatal shootings up 7%, robberies are up 13%, and overall violent crime is up 5% across the city compared to this time last year.
There's just not a lot of accountability for people who commit acts of violence or any other crime in Baltimore.
Law enforcement expert Jason Johnson believes the ongoing violence has to do with a lack in consequence, something he and legal experts like former federal prosecutor Dhruv Vignarajah hope will change with the upcoming election, specifically a change in leadership within the Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office.
We hear over and over again that people are going in and out of the criminal justice system with no consequences. They are being arrested, they're nominally being prosecuted, and they're back out on the streets. This is why we need collaboration and communication.
Over the weekend, police say they made more than 80 arrests, the majority for aggravated assault. There were 18 arrests for handgun violations, 6 drug arrests, 3 for attempted murder, and 1 homicide arrest. As for this triple shooting, no arrests have been made. Reporting in downtown Baltimore, Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
Well, making headlines right now, Baltimore County police say they arrested a juvenile for a stabbing in Cockeysville last night. It happened at Lord Byron Lane, just off Cranbrook Road. 2 victims were transported to the hospital. They are expected to survive. As Baltimore City and the county see some more incidents involving juveniles, so are some other cities. Over the weekend, police say a group of 100 juveniles ransacked a Wawa in Philadelphia. Video footage shows the group walking through the aisles, taking items and knocking merchandise onto the floor. The store was left trashed, and the group, they gathered in the parking lot outside.
New tonight, Armstrong Williams hosts a Your Voice, Your Future town hall, looking into the role of the family when it comes to building a good future for children. Panelists talked about the family's role in building healthy morals.
I think it starts at the top. You know, it starts with the parents and the example that's being set. You know, I can't minimize that. You know, I am largely the type of man I am because of the type of man that my father was, because of the type of woman that my mother is and was.
You build a character, I think, with the people that you surround yourself with and that you surround your children with. My family, we're a very close-knit family, and when I was talking to Aaron, what he said earlier about spending time with your kids, when you take that time and you carve that time out to look your child in the eye, no phone, no computer, no emails, nothing but you and your child, one-on-one, they can see your eyes and they can hear your voice, and they're listening to you and you're listening to them. And listening also is an art form, and it's very, very important in communication.
Well, you can watch that full town hall on our website, foxbaltimore.com.
Well, turning now to your Vote 2022 coverage. Republicans are getting big points on inflation and the economy, but not so much on abortion policy ahead of the midterms. According to a new Washington Post ABC News poll, the GOP has a 17-point lead over Democrats on the economy, an 18-point lead on inflation, and a 22-point lead on crime. Democrats have a 22-point advantage on abortion issues. Well, now a former White House press secretary says Democrats will lose in November if the election is a referendum on President Biden. Sinclair national correspondent Kayla Gaskins has details.
The midterm elections are just 6 weeks away, and with both the House and the Senate up for grabs, Republicans and Democrats are tightening their messaging on what they'll fight for if elected. But there's some concern for Democrats over what's been accomplished under President Biden during the past year and a half, especially as top issues for voters include the economy and inflation.
If it is a referendum on the president, they will lose, and they know that.
A new ABC News Washington Post poll shows 74% of Americans say the state of the economy is in bad shape, and a majority say Republicans will do a better job dealing with it. In battleground states like Pennsylvania, where Democrat John Fetterman and Republican Dr. Mehmet Oz are fighting for a Senate seat, Former White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says looking at state-by-state issues is crucial.
The Republicans have been spending millions of dollars on the air on crime ads against Fetterman because that's where they see his vulnerability.
Her remarks come as new polling shows the GOP has a 22-point lead on handling crime, with 56% of registered voters saying they trust Republicans more on the issue. On Friday, House Republicans introduced their Commitment to America, laying out their plans on crime, border security, and the economy if they win control of Congress.
The fact remains you cannot defend your communities if you cannot defend the homeland.
We're dealing with inflation, we're dealing with crime, we're dealing with things that literally is touching everybody's lives. So it's not a right versus left anymore.
And while the focus for both parties right now is on November's midterms, there's already talk about 2024's presidential election. The ABC News Washington Post poll shows 56% of Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents would prefer to nominate someone other than Joe Biden. I'm Kayla Gaskins reporting.
Wall Street did not start the week off on the right foot, with the Dow falling 325 points, the S&P shedding 37, and the Nasdaq falling 65. Surging interest rates in the UK's tax cuts saw the dollar surge.
A new Gallup poll finds more than half of Americans are experiencing hardship because of rising prices. When asked how they're adapting, some say they're buying generic brands, even cheaper groceries. Many say they're eating out less. Now, the situation is expected to get worse this winter, with some heating costs expected to jump 17% from a year ago because of the rising cost of natural gas, heating oil, and other fuel.
Well, the Congressional Budget Office is warning student loan forgiveness is going to cost the government $400 billion over the course of 30 years. President Biden's plan forgives $10,000 in federal student loans for people who earn less than $125,000. People who received federal Pell Grants are eligible for up to $20,000 in debt forgiveness. The Department of Education plans to release applications for the program next month. No debt has been forgiven yet.
Developing right now, emotional words from a young Baltimore mother back in June after $1,000 in temporary cash assistance funds were stolen from her benefits card.
I'm planning to wait outside the bank so that I know that I can withdraw it at midnight so nobody else gets it.
Well, now, almost 4 months later, we are still seeing examples of the same problem.
That's right. Fox 45's Amy Simpson is hearing from more Marylanders who are coming forward.
Our newsroom continues to field calls and messages about this problem, and the victims are often families using these benefits to pay for rent, groceries, just basic bills. And just as we learned back in June, these benefits, these stolen benefits, are still not being replaced. For Elizabeth Baltiera, it happened September 2nd.
I woke up, I went to the ATM. They said I had insufficient funds.
Within hours of her monthly temporary cash assistance benefits hitting her account.
And it said that there was a withdrawal in the amount of $900 from Coconut Grove, Florida. And it happened at 1:58 a.m.
This mom of 3 in Northeast Baltimore sharing her benefit card statement, which shows $900 were withdrawn from an ATM in Florida, a state she says she hasn't visited since the spring.
I never used my card in Florida.
Without this lifeline of benefits, Baltiera says September has been a battle.
Like I said, I use that to take care of me and my 3 kids, and so it's been hard.
In June, another Baltimore mother detailed how these benefits support her and her kids.
It means that I can pay my rent. It means that I can pay my BG&E. It means that I can pay the renter's insurance.
But these two women are far from alone. At a hearing with state lawmakers last week, representatives from Maryland's Department of Human Services said as of last month, there have been 693 cases of EBT fraud, which includes both the temporary cash assistance and food stamp programs.
There has been an increase in reports of EBT fraud over the past 2 years. And Maryland has not been spared from this trend.
And while state officials say this is nationwide criminal activity and work is underway to track down the fraudsters, none of the victims are being reimbursed after benefits are compromised.
Federal regulations are very clear in that federal funding cannot be used to reimburse stolen SNAP benefits.
In the meantime,
I'm going to change my PIN on the 1st.
This Baltimore mother is counting down to her next deposit, saying she's replaced her card and be at the bank right at midnight
before somebody else can try to do it again.
Feeling like it's her best option to protect her benefits.
It's not right, and it seems like nobody cares.
And while this woman's benefits were stolen all the way in Florida, she tells me she received a letter from the state earlier this month saying they found no evidence of fraudulent activity on her account. Meanwhile, this afternoon, Maryland DHS also telling me, doubling down, they continue to work with state and federal law enforcement trying to find whoever is responsible for this fraudulent activity. Once again, saying this is a nationwide problem, but they do say that the monetary value of the benefits stolen in just June, July, and August is worth about $296,000. Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
A unique sight in the night sky, the best way to see Jupiter in a once-in-a-lifetime event. Plus, Florida bracing for Hurricane Ian, how it plans to deal with the power outages, sure to follow the storm. Those stories, much more, coming up after the break.
And sunshine and a refreshing start of the bus stop in the morning. In the afternoon, pleasant with highs in the low 70s. But we could have Ian impacts around here. I'm going to let you know when they could get here and if it's going to make for a weekend washout in my Weather Authority forecast. Signs that Ian is strengthening this evening. Right now, a Category 2 storm heading toward western Cuba and eventually could be a 3 as it makes its way over Cuba tonight and turns into maybe a catastrophic 4 by tomorrow, lasting all the way through Wednesday as it makes its closest pass to the Gulf Coast of Florida. Could have, at least on this forecast track, the potential here of some catastrophic storm surge of 9 to 10 foot plus above ground level in places like Tampa Bay, a very highly populated area. And then eventually this thing could be shooting off, as you see on the computer models, up towards the southeastern United States. Now, I do want you to notice there has been kind of a little bit of an easterly, kind of southerly jog, more so towards Sarasota than Tampa with some of the latest computer model trends. So we'll have to see if the National Hurricane Center is picking up on that maybe more south and easterly track. And even some computer models say this could go over the Atlantic and re-strengthen and maybe head its way up towards the Carolinas instead of kind of staying over land. So again, there are still a lot of question marks here. We're still early in the game, but nonetheless, you can see where these tracks end up, somewhere just to our south. And as this thing really ramps up and provides some really strong, maybe devastating surge, rain, and wind to places like Tampa, Sarasota, all the way down the west coast of Florida, it eventually goes over a more unfavorable area if it goes far enough north before it makes its final approach into Florida. So this thing could weaken a little bit as it makes that final push if it were to go north of Tampa, but that's still not a sure bet. And then eventually, what's left of that storm as it gets kind of conduited, if you will, between two high pressure systems, which if they have a little more influence could, again, maybe make it more of a southerly and easterly track than expected here. Either way, it looks like potentially the end result could be some remnants pushing toward us as we head towards this weekend. Notice the rain Saturday afternoon, Sunday. We're kind of on the edge, at least on this computer model, even into Monday. So that could put down at least a few tenths, if not an inch or two of rain. And there could be some gusty winds, too, especially near the water. So that's something to watch, especially for heading out to the Ravens game. 61 right now, calm winds. It's going to be a nice, quiet start to tomorrow as this latest weather maker continues to push off to our north and northeast. Sunshine mixed with clouds returns. High temperatures getting into about the 70 to 75 range for tomorrow. Cooling trend still breezy Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Clouds increase, and then all eyes on the weekend for potential remnants of Ian here Sunday, Monday, and maybe a wet and windy Ravens game as well. And by the way, we're going to be updating this article through any potential impacts here. Go to foxbaltimore.com. We've got the very latest on Ian right there on the internet for you.
And our coverage of Ian continues. The governor of Florida touches base with residents as Hurricane Ian rapidly intensifies and heads towards the state's west coast, urging them to be prepared.
It will bring heavy rains, strong winds, flash flooding, storm surge, along with isolated tornado activity along Florida's Gulf Coast. Floridians up and down the Gulf Coast should feel the impacts of this as up to 36 hours before actual landfall due to the size of the hurricane. This is a really, really big hurricane at this point.
Well, voluntary evacuations are already underway, and some school districts have announced closures. The Florida Department of Transportation is suspending tolls at facilities in Tampa Bay to avoid traffic issues. Governor Ron DeSantis has declared a state of emergency, along with President Biden, to coordinate disaster relief to the impacted regions. Residents should be prepared for power outages, flooding, and intense storm surge. Now, Florida Power and Light has activated its command center. Al Pefley with our Sinclair sister station in West Palm has a look at how they're getting ready for the storm.
We can use that as a backup if we do run out of capacity.
FPL has activated its command center in Riviera Beach, and all eyes are on the track of Hurricane Ian.
This is the hub of where we manage all of our resources across the state.
There are countless decisions to be made, like where to put crews, how to supply them with food, fuel, and lodging. FPL has about 13,000 workers from partner utilities in 27 states responding to Florida to deal with power outages that may happen in the wake of Hurricane Ian. Many of them will be waiting at a staging area in Lake City in North Florida, waiting for the storm to pass.
Hurricane Ian has the potential to become a major hurricane. FPL is taking it very seriously. We want our customers to take it seriously, too.
FPL says new tools like a new $1.2 million unmanned drone will help them assess damage to power lines quickly.
We also have a smart grid technology that allows us to automatically restore power without rolling trucks to some neighborhoods.
FPL says it has more than 200,000 intelligent devices on its energy grid that can interact with smart meters on homes and businesses, and this gives them the ability to spot problems and reroute power around troubled areas. Although West Palm Beach is not expected to take a direct hit from Hurricane Ian, an FPL subcontractor is cutting off trees and branches near power lines in the city to try to reduce the chances of people in this area losing power. One resident who's lived in West Palm Beach for 30 years told us she's glad to see workers are getting this done ahead of the storm.
Well, I mean, if the storm does hit, we won't be without power for like
2 months.
Well, trending now, Jupiter is now the closest it has been to Earth in nearly 6 decades. The planet looks pearly white to the naked eye in the sky tonight. Jupiter is at opposition, which means the Earth is directly between it and the sun. 367 million miles separate the Earth and Jupiter right now. NASA says stargazers will be able to see the planet's bands with binoculars or a telescope and maybe even catch a glimpse of 3 or 4 of Jupiter's moons. Jupiter won't be this close again until the year 2129. Well, 3 people shot, one of them just 15, the latest on a shooting in Northeast Baltimore this afternoon. And police say he killed her and used a shopping cart to dispose of her body. The new details on a murder investigation in Northwest Baltimore. And the Ravens flying high after a win against the Patriots. The change we're seeing when it comes to the offense.
Orioles at Boston, 4 games out from that final wild card. Red Sox already eliminated, but AL East foes wouldn't mind hurting the Birds. They remember the curse of Robert Andino. Cedric Mullins, second pitch of the game, gone. 1-0 O's in the first. Next inning, his second at bat. It's a triple for Mullins. Played some more. Orioles up 5-0 after the top of the second. Bottom of the frame, Boston threatening. Jordan Lyles bases juice. It's 5-2. Rugden Odor double play from his bottom. Bails out Lyles, then came the rain delay. They're back at it, though. O's up 8-5 right now in the fifth. After the Ravens' Week 3 performance in New England and 37-26 win, everyone from fans to the team saying today that's how it's supposed to happen. The Ravens quickly moved on from issues a week prior with their loss to Miami. And let's start with the best player on the field and the best quarterback right now in the NFL, Lamar Jackson. Jackson leads the league in passer rating and touchdowns with 10. He's top 4 in rushing yards. Against the Pats, Jackson 5 total touchdowns, 4 passing, making what was once a dangerous run team now a huge threat through the air.
You ask any defensive coordinator or head coach in this league, they'll tell you that this offense is hard to defend, you know. So that's a pretty good measuring stick right there. Now, executing and then keeping it going and coming up with, ways to keep people off balance. That's what coaches do. That's what coordinators do.
The Pro Bowl, as we know it, is no more. The NFL will replace the meaningless All-Star game before the Super Bowl with the Pro Bowl games, a week-long of skills competition and flag football game in Las Vegas. The signing of veteran edge rusher Jason Pierre-Paul is a done deal. More on that at 11:30 when Sports Unlimited continues.
Morgan, thanks. Florida bracing for what could be one of its worst storms ever, and it could also impact us here in Maryland. We are tracking Hurricane Ian. And neighbors shocked by the details of a killing in their community. The new details from investigators into a murder in northwest Baltimore. Well, Halloween is still more than a month away, but many people are already thinking about holiday shopping, especially with the inflation in the mix. A new survey from Bankrate shows inflation will change holiday shopping habits this year. 84% of holiday shoppers say they will try to save money this year, with 40% saying they plan to buy fewer items. 21% say they will buy gifts from cheaper brands, and 41% of holiday shoppers say they'll be making more DIY gifts.
A 15-year-old is one of 3 victims in a Baltimore shooting today. The latest on the investigation and the city's struggle with violent crime. Also, he moved her remains in a shopping cart, police say. New information about a murder investigation in northwest Baltimore. And officials are warning it could be unlike any storm we've seen. How Florida is bracing for Hurricane Ian.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News Late Edition.
Good evening, I'm Kai Jackson. Violent crime across Baltimore City is up 5% compared to this time last year, and that includes murders and non-fatal shootings. Today, a 15-year-old was injured in a triple shooting in the city. Jeff Abel has the latest.
The search is still on tonight for the gunman who opened fire this afternoon near Clifton Park. Neighbors there are reporting rapid gunfire. And tonight, among the victims is a 15-year-old male. On this troubled block of East 29th Street, anger was in the air and violence was in the streets.
Like I said, it just sounded like loud boom. It had to been 30 to 60 rounds, within about less than 10 seconds.
Jeff Lindner was installing a security system at a home on this street when the bullets started flying.
My partner was outside and saw people fleeing the area.
One of the 3 people hit by the gunfire was a 15-year-old male. 2 other male victims, a 23 and 25-year-old, were also injured.
There were children, elementary school-age children on the street when it happened.
Officers spent most of the afternoon questioning residents on this block and searching for clues. At one home, officers raced inside, but it's unclear what, if anything, was recovered. In this case, the 3 victims are all expected to survive their injuries, but a report released earlier this year showed the number of young homicide victims in this city is growing. In fact, homicide is now the leading cause of death among children in Baltimore.
These kids are going to kindergarten, and when they go into kindergarten, they're drawing pictures of guns and dead bodies because that's their experience. We've got to change the narrative.
Today's shooting happened a couple of blocks from Clifton Park, but tonight, officers are still trying to understand who opened fire here and why.
I grew up hearing helicopters when I'm going to bed at night, so what are you going to do?
Again, police tell us tonight that all 3 victims received non-life-threatening injuries. Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
Well, that triple shooting today follows a violent weekend in Baltimore. In fact, city police say 7 people were shot over the weekend, and there were more than 21 robberies. There was a triple shooting Saturday night. A man, 31-year-old woman, and a 19-year-old were shot. The latest crime statistics show homicides are up 3%, non-fatal shootings up 7%, and robberies up 13%. And overall, violent crime is up 5% across the city compared to this time last year. We're learning new information about a body found in South Baltimore last week. Keith Daniels has the latest on what charging documents reveal.
Well, police have charged a 63-year-old man with murder in this case. The victim killed, they say, during a domestic dispute. Now, police made that arrest Thursday. News of the arrest today and tonight. The unsettling details in these charging documents of what happened. It's a crime that some in the neighborhood say they had not heard about. News of the murder stopped Angela Norman in her tracks during her evening walk.
For other people to help that individual, that's even scarier.
Baltimore police have arrested Bruce Poole in connection with the murder of Kelly Logan. Police say the 63-year-old man killed the 53-year-old woman inside his bedroom at the Hampshire House Apartments on Park Heights Avenue near Menlo Drive, Saturday, September 17th. 4 days later, September 21st, the woman's body discovered in thick brush under a light rail bridge along Cloman Street in South Baltimore. Investigators say she had been stabbed several times in her head and neck. According to charging documents, after she was killed, the suspect used a shopping cart similar to this one to remove a large plastic trash bag believed to be filled with Logan's remains from his apartment, then dumped the woman's body, police say, with the help of 2 other individuals.
Because nobody thought that was wrong. The other people who were helping him didn't see anything wrong with that. The individual might have said it's garbage or whatever, but still, I don't know. It's just a really sad situation.
Investigators learned Logan lived with Poole, her boyfriend. While at the apartment on the same day the body was found, police say Poole showed up at the apartment. Investigators say he was questioned. A short time later, police say he confessed to the murder.
I'm just glad that the police caught him because he might do it to somebody else. It's just that simple.
Well, tonight Poole is behind bars. He faces several charges, including first-degree murder. Reporting tonight, Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
Fox 45 News is demanding answers from the Baltimore City Council after a hearing on the Johns Hopkins Police Department, originally scheduled for Thursday, was canceled. In fact, Councilwoman Odette Ramos proposed that meeting and canceled it. Now, in a statement today, she said that's because of logistics. The statement goes on to say her office is working to plan a virtual town hall on the matter. And we're asking the city council where they stand on the proposed police department for Johns Hopkins after protesters disrupted a town hall on the matter last week. Today, we sent questions asking, do you support the implementation of JHU's police force? If not, what are your concerns? If you don't support the Hopkins Police Department, should other universities have their police forces disbanded? And given the understaffing of the Baltimore Police Department, do you believe BPD can provide the level of policing on campuses of Hopkins without a private police force? So far, we haven't heard back from the council members that we emailed. Now, we do know there are more opportunities for the community to talk about this. Hopkins is having 2 more town halls this week, Thursday and Friday. We're tracking Hurricane Ian right now as the Category 2 storm heads towards Florida. It's expected to cause significant damage and flooding, especially towards those coastal communities. Here's meteorologist Jonathan Myers.
Yeah, Kai, and here's the current track expected out of Ian, the latest advisory coming out of the National Hurricane Center. Things still updating here, but we do have maximum winds that have been ramped up a little bit to 105 miles an hour, making it a strong Category 2. And you actually just see that new update coming on now as I put this in motion. Overnight, this becomes a Category 3 as it makes the move over Cuba. That could have some pretty devastating effects on the western side of that island. Then eventually it trails its way all the way up the Gulf Coast of Florida and eventually could impact places like Sarasota and Tampa with devastating effects as a Category 3, maybe Category 4 storm. We'll have to see here. Exact track really counts. And eventually it actually gets up near us. Take a look. By the end of the weekend, early next week, we could see remnant effects with up to about a ½ inch, maybe an inch of rain perhaps. And take a look, those strong winds as they move northbound, yes, they are going to diminish, but still some of these winds by the end of the weekend, early next week, some of these greens, some of these blues, maybe 20 to 40 miles an hour in gusts. If, again, it takes that track, if it holds on to the intensity. A lot of ifs here, but we're timing everything out on the Future Scan and my 7-day forecast in a couple of minutes.
All right, Jonathan, thank you. Governor Larry Hogan says the state is keeping a close eye on the hurricane. Promises in a tweet, in fact, today that emergency management teams are watching the storm's predicted path and will be ready to respond in the state if needed.
Now, a Fox 45 News alert in 3, 2, 1.
Well, police in Chicago shoot a suspect inside their own station. Chicago's police chief says a man used a fire escape to sneak into the police station. Officers were undergoing SWAT training at the time of the break-in. The suspect was able to grab 2 guns before he was shot by an officer. He was taken to the hospital for treatment along with 1 officer who hurt their leg during that response. Security footage from the station shows the suspect entering earlier in the day and asking where he could retrieve personal property before he later came back and broke in. Kai?
Mary, thank you. A new booster protects against some of COVID's most dangerous strains, but Americans don't seem eager to take it. Why so few people are getting the most updated shot? Also, students can't learn if they're not in class. We press city school leaders about why more than 1,000 students are missing from class. Here's a look at today's top trending stories. Number one, a month into the new school year, and more than 1,000 Baltimore City students are being marked missing. Nearly 1 in every 60 Baltimore City students either hasn't shown up for class or has 10 or more consecutive unexcused absences. School officials say they're doing everything they can to track down absent students. One administrator tells Fox 45 the goal is to help, not punish kids.
Well, I think it's a variety of reasons. Some families have suffered homelessness, loss of job, poverty. They are dealing with trauma. One particular young man told us yesterday that he was working and he couldn't figure out how to fit his work schedule into school.
Well, those missing students could mean less funding for city schools. Schools are required to report enrollment numbers by September 30th. Number two, student loan forgiveness will cost American taxpayers $400 billion over the course of 30 years. That, according to the Congressional Budget Office. The president's plan forgives $10,000 in federal student loans for people who earn less than $125,000 a year. People who received federal Pell Grants are eligible for up to $20,000 in debt forgiveness. The Department of Education plans to release applications for the program next month. Number three, some families in Baltimore are struggling to pay their bills because their temporary cash assistance funds were stolen. According to Maryland's Department of Human Services, there have been 693 cases of EBT fraud. That includes both the temporary cash assistance and food stamp programs, also known as SNAP. Now, officials say those funds are not being reimbursed because the federal guidelines don't allow funds to be used to recoup stolen benefits. There's a new round of boosters to help fight COVID, but apparently not many people are getting them. Looking into why people don't take advantage of these shots.
And the morning commute forecast can be dry, quiet, refreshing temperatures in the 50s, working into the 60s by the end of the commute. But boy, things could get real active by this weekend. We could have the remnants of Ian around here. I'm going to let you know what it's going to bring and if it's going to produce a washout for your plans in my Weather Authority forecast.
Fox 45 continues to track Hurricane Ian. That storm could be one of the worst in Florida's history. Ian is expected to make landfall Thursday, but the storm is so large, residents are being warned to prepare for heavy rain and extreme winds for 3 days before the worst of it hits. Evacuation orders are in place right now for 6 counties. That includes parts of Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay is basically made up of Pinellas and Hillsborough counties. Now, elected leaders say residents need to take these warnings seriously.
This could be the storm that we've hoped would never come to our shores.
Well, you certainly can replace personal possessions. You can't bring anyone back to life. And I think these last couple of years with these superstorms, if that hasn't shown us how devastating Mother Nature can be, Mother Nature always wins. This is nothing to mess around with. If you can leave, just leave now.
That's the advice right now from the mayor of Tampa. Meantime, that storm is currently over 500 miles wide and could bring sustained winds of 100 miles per hour when it makes a landfall.
All right, Hurricane Ian, the brand new advisory coming out of the National Hurricane Center as of 11 p.m. You see here, this is still a Category 2, but a strengthening Category 2 at 105 miles an hour, moving over western Cuba in the next, say, about 12 hours, and then trailing its way into the bathtub warm Gulf of Mexico waters. In the eastern Gulf, some of these water temperatures 85 to 90 degrees, so that's plenty warm to keep this strong. Now, the thing is, as it gets close to the coastline, it's going to start interacting with land. That may start to weaken this a bit, but it's going to slow down too, potentially. So the newest track started to push us a little farther east now. It basically goes right over Tampa early Thursday, which is not a good track for these folks. Could have some devastating storm surge 9-10 feet plus above ground level. This would be historic if it occurs. But again, there could be still some shifts in some of these forecasted tracks as we head through the next several days. And eventually it moves into the southeastern United States and weekends. But we could see some remnants here over the weekend. Now, Ian has computer model tracks that have been gradually moving south and east. Hopefully a transition to eventually put this more so over Sarasota. A track north of Tampa would be just an absolutely devastating worst-case scenario for these folks, forcing a lot of water funneling up Tampa Bay. And, of course, that's a major population center. If it goes a little farther south of Tampa, the surge wouldn't be quite as bad. Nonetheless, something to watch here. There are still some computer models that say this could go over the Atlantic, re-strengthen, maybe impact the Carolinas. Others say it goes over portions of the inland Carolinas as well as Georgia and weekends, and then we end up with some remnants potentially either way. So something to watch for us over the weekend. Now, notice this highly favorable area for development in the red continues to move over that into, say, Wednesday or so. That's what it's a Category 4. And by Thursday, begins to weaken as it moves inland and then eventually becomes more so of a rainmaker. Now, again, the next 24, 36 hours, the time to watch for strengthening as it gets forced between these two high pressure systems, really kind of where that slot is between these two and the orientation between these two is going to kind of dictate where this thing's going to go. Is it going over Tampa? Is it going south and east of Tampa or north and west? Either way, for us, this is what our GFS Future Scan computer model says as we head towards this weekend. Very reliable when we watch for tropical systems. You see here later Saturday into Sunday, maybe some wet conditions here, a little bit windy too for the Ravens game as well. Could have some winds 20, 30 miles an hour at least if it takes the track expected. And then even into Monday, some of the leftovers before it starts pulling away and out. There's also a high chance of development that's way down here in the central Atlantic, but that is not going to be a concern for us in the near term. 61 winds out of the west-southwest at 3 miles an hour right now. You can see some of these rain showers north and west. We had some sprinkles today. Those should be gone tomorrow as the system packs up its bags and moves away. So some sunshine mixed with clouds tomorrow, 73 cool down Wednesday, Thursday, 70 on Friday. Showers develop as Ian starts ambling up the coast on Saturday. And we're just going to have to really track and monitor Sunday, Monday. Those computer models there for the Ravens game into early next week. And, of course, we're going to keep you updated on the web as well. We've got a brand new web article we put together and to keep that updated through any potential impacts this weekend there on FoxBaltimore.com.
It's a new and improved vaccine, according to those conducting this research. I'm Liz Bonus. We explain why just ahead.
The new COVID-19 booster shots are off to a slow start. Fewer than 2% of people eligible to get them are stepping up. National correspondent Liz Bonus takes a look at the numbers.
Hey there, everybody. Part of the push to get these new boosters is to try to reduce the odds new variants will continue to spread. But just as the CDC reports that BA.5 is on the decline, BA.4.6 and one called BF7 now on the rise. BF7 said to be sort of a cousin to BA.5. It's led to slightly more than 2% of confirmed cases this week. BA.4.6, now the top strain behind BA.5. It now accounts for slightly more than 1 in 10 of the new cases showing up. BA.5 has dropped from almost 9 in 10 cases this week to 8 in 10, according to the CDC. These new bivalent boosters suggested now for everyone 12 and older if it's been at least 2 to 4 months since your last shot. Krista Hyson says this newest vaccine, designed to protect against both the original strain and the Omicron BA.4 and BA.5 variants.
They've tailored it to be more aggressive against Omicron.
Those stepping up to get them say it's because
I want to live. I mean, I have had a couple of people who have died, and I just felt like it's my duty to do the most I can to try to sustain my life and live as long as I can.
The new boosters could be a real game changer. The CEO of Pfizer announcing today he has COVID-19 for a second time. He's had 4 vaccine doses of the original vaccine, but not this newest shot for protection.
I think the new variants, they are highly contagious, so it's hard to avoid it.
Kevin Hartnell brought his family into this clinic in Ohio's Hamilton County for boosters today. The kids say the vaccines have made getting back to school a lot easier.
It's a lot easier to learn.
I believe that.
In school than on a computer.
Now, one note, with less lab testing, it's hard to track some of these newer variants, but it is at least likely that the newer shots will be protective against some of these sort of offshoots of Omicron. I'm medical reporter Liz Bonus. Now back to you.
Well, the Ravens avenged their loss to Miami last week by taking on the Patriots and taking them out. The rookie coach John Harbaugh says closed out the game in New England. That's on Sports Unlimited. Well, that's all for us on the late edition. Thank you for watching. I'm Kai Jackson. Here's Morgan Atzip with Sports Unlimited. Hi, Morgan.
Thank you, Kai. The Orioles on the road for their final trip away from Camden Yards this season. At Boston, then at New York, with the potential for all of these games to mean something. Even then, still might not be enough to grab what they're chasing, the third and final AL wildcard. The O's 4 games back from it with 10 remaining. First up at Boston, Red Sox eliminate already, but those AL East foes wouldn't mind hurting the Birds. They remember the curse of Andino. Cedric Mullins getting the early lead. Second pitch gone. His 16th 1-0 O's in the first. Next inning, his at-bat number 2. That's a triple for Mullins. Plates more. Orioles up 5-0 after the top of the second. Bottom of the frame, Boston threatening. Jordan Lyles, bases loaded. It's 5-2. Rougned Odor, a double play from his bottom, bails out Lyles. And then came the rain delay, but O's currently up 11-5 right now in the 7th. Only 4 games across all of baseball today, so here's the current American League wildcard picture. The O's still chasing that third and final spot. The Blue Jays, Rays, and Mariners own it right now. The Birds, though, could pick up half a game tonight. As far as the Ravens see it, the only time and energy they were going to give their Week 2 loss to Miami was to learn from it and move on to New England. Yesterday's performance and 37-26 win against the Patriots is proof it is a week-by-week league. Teams never as good as they think or as bad, but the Ravens were really good in Week 3. Quarterback Lamar Jackson threw 3 games, surpassing the type of MVP-style play he had in 2019 with 5 total touchdowns. He leads the league with passing TDs with 10 and is a top 4 runner. The defense, after blowing a 21-point fourth-quarter lead to the Dolphins, generated 4 turnovers.
Obviously a very important win. Back and watch the tape. It's one of those games that looked very similar on tape to what it looked like when you watched it in real time. So confirmed a lot of things for us. I thought the guys played extremely hard and made plays when they needed to be made in critical points in time in the game. So in a hard-fought battle, and that's really at the end what wins games.
The biggest story, though, remains on defense. The Ravens closed out on that side of the ball after blowing that 21-point fourth-quarter lead to Miami a week prior. The Ravens defense still giving up chunk plays, but produced 4 turnovers, and 3 of those takeaways were New England's final 3 possessions on offense, none bigger than rookie safety Kyle Hamilton's punch-out after getting burned by the Dolphins a few times.
Get a sense of urgency to try to become, a little bit better of a player, this week than he was last week, and he became a much better player. And then to see him come up and make that play, in that critical moment was kind of a reward for that. That's a play not too many people will make. I'll also say Marcus Peters. That's a fumble catch that not too many people are ever going to make either. His ball skills are just one of a kind. So turning point play in the game.
We usually get some injury updates on Monday from John Harbaugh, but nothing today groundbreaking on those key veterans that left injured, especially nose tackle Michael Pierce. His MRI results not known yet on his arm. The Ravens did get Jason Pierre-Paul into the building to report for a physical. The veteran edge rusher passed it and officially signed his 1-year deal. This is huge for the Ravens. While he's 33 and didn't have a team yet for his 13th NFL season, the Ravens are thin at pass rush. They only had 3 against New England, and Justin Houston left with a groin injury. JPP has 91 career sacks and 2 Super Bowl rings. That's all for Sports Unlimited tonight. I'm Morgan Atzett. Thanks for watching, and have a great night.